Donald Trump indictment coming soon. Or is it? We don't really know. It was supposed to come today, Wednesday, a historic indictment, something that we've never seen before in this country. They were putting up bike racks all over the place in New York City for the FBI agents to push over when they decided to insurrect another building. And suddenly we woke up today to try to piece together what's going on here, and what happened? Oh man, canceled. That stinks. I wonder what happened there. We're going to turn our attention over to New York and see what they have in store for us. They're telling us that the jurors were sent home. From NBC New York, they tell us Manhattan DA tells the Trump grand jury to stay home. Sources say the reasons are unclear. The Manhattan DA has told the grand jurors weighing charges against Trump to stay home on Wednesday. Oh man. Did it snow there or something? What happened over there? Rather than reconvene as planned, DA Alvin Bragg said, you guys better be on standby for Thursday. Now, yesterday, we heard that Robert Costello was in the grand jury room and he was openly sharing information they weren't even asking him about. He was saying this whole thing is a total scam. Cohen is totally unreliable, has no credibility whatsoever. He's basically a liar. He's a convicted perjurer, and you need to know what the truth is. So did that rattle the cage? Was the Jenga thing already almost tipping over and Robert Costello came and pulled out the last block? We don't know. The reason for this delay is unclear, including whether it may involve another potential witness to be heard. On Monday, earlier the week, grand jury, which had, according to multiple sources, been prepared as of Friday to issue an indictment decision as early as this week, heard from Robert Costello, who we're going to hear a lot more about. We actually have his PDF that was signed by Michael Cohen that waived any attorney-client privilege. They heard from Costello. He sought to discredit the key witness, Michael Cohen. They were scheduled to reconvene today. So NBC reached out. They said, hey, Alvin, what's going on over there, my man? Are you getting a little cold sweats at night because of what you're about to do? But his office declined to comment later in the day, saying it couldn't speak on grand jury matters, obviously. Now, NBC News confirmed that prosecutors were upset with Cohen's appearance before the grand jury, and they told him to shut up. And we're going to hear that from CNN themselves. They reached out to his attorney to tell Cohen that he should not appear before the panel again. Why? I thought he would do everything. Wasn't this Trump's consigliere? Wasn't this his right-hand man, his bag man? Proceedings obviously have been shrouded in secrecy. Latest developments come 5 days after Trump told everybody to get out and support him. Unclear if any organized protests will matriculate, but we haven't seen any thus far. So very strange. What a weird day. Why was all of this supposed to come down today, crashing down? NYPD, they're all putting on their suits today. They're kissing their wives goodbye. This could be it, honey. This could be it. It could be my last day. Those insurrectionists are very agitated. Or not. I don't know. Are they going to prosecute him? Maybe they won't. In fact, Van Jones is hinting that maybe this is an appropriate time for sobriety. Maybe there's a reason historically we don't prosecute former presidents and current presidential candidates. I know a lot of people in America and throughout the world have TDS level 11 out of 10, and they can't really recognize this concept. But when you zoom out historically on all of the other presidents and all of the other individuals in our country's history that could have potentially been prosecuted by some partisan hack somewhere and weren't, that's not by accident. There were other presidents who did other things that other people absolutely detested. As angry as everybody is over Donald Trump, the country has been through more difficult times, I would say, than his presidency, for as hysterical as they are. So to just say that the law is the law and we just prosecute any speeding ticket regardless of the consequences seems to me to miss the long arc of history, which educates a little bit more cautiously than that. There's a reason why these prosecutions don't happen, because it wrecks a lot of things. Now, Van Jones recognizes that, and he's on with CNN and he's telling everybody, hey, why don't you put the TDS juice down, stop guzzling this back shot after shot, day after day, and why don't we address the situation with a little sobriety out there?
I think that the heat is on this DA. I think he's going to make a very sober decision, and I would not be surprised if he doesn't step back from the brink. I just think that the reality is he's got to make a sober decision now. I agree with David. A charge like this, a porn star payoff 7 years ago, somehow tied to the election, but not really. It doesn't seem like the right way to go.
Not the right way to go. And you heard him there in that first clip saying, why don't you step back from the brink?
I think he's going to make a very sober decision, and I would not be surprised if he doesn't step back from the brink.
Wow. So they know because their side is going to be in the crosshairs next. You think that Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton, although she was never the president, or it never will be, or could it be Obama or any of the other individuals, right, who might come down the pike, who could be in the crosshairs politically of whatever the next attorney general wants to do? If that's the precedent that we set in this country, where whoever is the first to capture the flag of the Department of Justice gets to dictate the judicial standards across the country and prosecute all their political enemies because it's now appropriate, that's not good. And the Republicans, I would expect, would do the same thing. So Bragg's office did respond. Yesterday, we talked about a letter that came out from the House of Representatives. They sent that over to the DA's office, and they responded to the letter. Alvin Bragg said, hey, this is not a political prosecution. He says, what are you talking about? I'm a great prosecutor. I love prosecuting crime. This has nothing to do with me being a political hack. No. They issued a statement in response to Congress. They said, we're not going to be intimidated by attempts to undermine this justice process, nor will we let baseless accusations deter us from fairly applying the law. Is this a joke? Are they mocking us? What are they talking about here? They've had to twist themselves into pretzels 35 times. Everybody is saying this is nuts. Turning a misdemeanor categorized crime into a felony just to sort of try to eke this one past through the statute of limitations. It's not fairly applying the law. It's going to dig for some basis for this. Everybody is saying it. Even the left attorneys are saying it. They say in every prosecution, we follow the law without fear or favor to uncover the truth. Oh, gosh, these prosecutors. They all talk like this. Get a life. Our skilled, honest, and dedicated lawyers remain hard at work. All right, look. Your local DOJ is no different from your local MVD. They're giant government bureaucracies. So we've got House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan and others are angry, and they're going to be firing back. And we'll see what they do from the DA's office. Now, we have reaction on this. Even over at CBS, this woman, Rick Kleiman, she was explaining that this is a strange case, saying that Michael Cohen is a terrible witness. He's totally unreliable, has no credibility whatsoever. And why is he being used as the centerpiece, as the key witness for the entire case?
However, is it unusual in 2023 to look back to a case in 2016 when Michael Cohen, the main person who is the witness in this case, pled guilty in 2018?
Perjury.
And keep in mind, the Southern District of New York, the federal government, passed on going forward against Donald Trump when he left the presidency. The Federal Election Commission passed. So now we have a new sovereign in the state who says it doesn't matter.
None of that matters. I'm smarter than everybody else. He wants to make sure he gets reinvited to all the cocktail parties. And they know that if he doesn't prosecute Trumpo, then it's going to be the end of the career. I mean, that's basically why he got elected. Him and Tishy, the tishiest of all the Tishy Jameses. That's why they're there. So we've got another clip I wanted to share with you. Representative Thomas Massie dug this one out for us. And he said on Twitter today that Cohen was one of the least credible people that he has ever interviewed, ever. And I want to play a little bit of this so we can get our bearing straight about who this person is and how he communicates.
Mr. Cohen, can you just clarify, did you say that at times you would do what you thought Mr. Trump wanted you to do, not specifically what he told you to do?
At times, yes.
So you just went on your intuition?
I don't know if I would call it intuition as much as I would just say my knowledge of what he wanted, because it happened before. And I knew what he had wanted.
Does a lawyer have a duty to provide his client with good legal advice?
Yes.
Were you a good lawyer to Mr. Trump?
I believe so.
When you arranged a payment to Ms. Clifford, you say in your testimony, I'm going to quote from your testimony, that you did so, quote, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do. You said that, unquote. That's your testimony today. You said you didn't even consider whether it was legal. How could you give your client legal advice when you're not even considering whether it's legal?
Kind of bad lawyering there.
I did what I knew Mr. Trump wanted. This conversation with Mr. Trump started.
I didn't ask whether you're a good fixer. I asked whether you were a good lawyer.
Sometimes you have to melt both together. I needed to, at that time, ensure and protect Mr. Trump. And if I put which I'm clearly suffering the penalty of, I clearly erred on the side of wrong.
So you feel like without bothering to consider whether it was proper, much less whether it was the right thing to do, by ignoring any conscience, if you have one, that you were protecting Mr. Trump.
I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand.
You feel that was how to protect, as his lawyer, you feel that you did a good job. You said you were a good lawyer, right?
Is
that
correct.
being a good lawyer? To not even consider whether it's legal or not?
Legal advice.
I didn't work for the campaign. I was working and I was trying to protect Mr. Trump. I sat with Mr. Trump, and this goes back all the way to 2011. This wasn't the first scenario with Ms. Daniels.
Let's go back then.
So my point is, this was an ongoing situation. It didn't just start in October.
Right.
Sir, please, you have to let me finish.
Well,
it didn't start in October.
Let me
it
ask
started
you
many years earlier.
When were you disbarred?
Yesterday, from what I read in the paper.
Yesterday. When should you have been disbarred, based on the legal counsel you were giving your client?
Asking your client to break the law, giving your client advice that is literally breaking the law so that he gets charged with crimes. That's not lawyering. What? It'd be like somebody came to me and said, Rob, can you help me with this criminal charge? And I was like, yeah, you should just go commit more crimes. That's a good solution.
I don't have an answer for your question.
How long were you counsel for Mr. Trump?
Since 2007.
When is the first time you gave him bad legal advice or failed to inform him of his legal obligations, as you testified today you did in the case of the payment to Ms. Clifford? When was the first time you did that? Would that qualify for disbarment?
I don't know, sir. I'm not the Bar Association.
Well, you have to comply with the
you
ethical rules. You're a lawyer.
Consult with them maybe occasionally on some of these things.
Well, there's no point now. I lost my law license.
That is true. There is no point now, Michael Cohen. You have lost your law license, indeed. And you were also convicted of perjury. So nobody should really take your word now, should they? Because you have been convicted for dishonesty. So here we have another situation where Ted Lieu is a Democrat. He's in the House of Representatives. He is responding to some Republican action from the House committees that have sent letters over to Alvin Bragg's office saying, we want to know what the heck you're doing here. Are you using federal funds? Are you interfering with federal elections? We've heard that how often? This is a domestic interference with an election. So Congress says we've got the authority to go in here and investigate this. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, they took those rules to the cleaners, man. So they used those any which way they possibly could. And we're going to do the same thing now. And Ted Lieu is very unhappy about this. And so he was out in front of Congress today explaining how reckless and what a rampage these Republicans are on.
So in addition to doing stupid stuff and trying to pass extreme bills, Republicans
stupid extremists
gone on a rampage.
That's our Congress. Hey, you stupid extremist doo-doo heads over there.
About what the Manhattan District Attorney is doing, without even knowing what the purported charges are or what the grand jury evidence is. What if the evidence is overwhelming? What if it's rock solid?
What if it's not?
That an American by the name of Donald Trump committed crimes.
What if it's not?
How do Republicans know? They don't. And you know what else?
We have a pretty good idea. If the star witness is Michael Cohen and your entire side is rounding up for this guy, we know it's probably a pretty weak case. You know how else we know, Ted? Well, the FEC declined it. The DOJ declined it. Everybody else has declined it up until this very moment when seemingly it's convenient. You know, all these other horrific stories are coming out about Joe Biden. We can't even keep up with all of them. The world seems like it's on the verge of a banking crisis. We've got the Axis powers aligning themselves with President Xi and Putin. We've got all of this scandal coming out about Joe being paid millions of dollars or his family being funneled millions of dollars from the Oversight Committee, the Treasury SARs, the list goes on and on and on. And here, you know, they're calling each other doo-doo heads and saying that this is potentially a huge deal, right? We've got all of this other stuff. We know it's not a huge deal. We know they're turning it into a political spectacle so that we can maybe focus on this instead of some of the other things. This is our Congress.
What else they cannot explain? When Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, was arrested, indicted, convicted, and went to prison for participating in an illegal hush money payment scheme to Stormy Daniels, not a single Republican leader complaining now said a thing about what happened to Michael Cohen.
Well, that's because he committed the crime. Hello, Ted, hello. That's because he did it.
They cannot explain why they are holding Donald Trump to a different standard.
I just did that like 5 times. All right. He's obviously he needs somebody to explain it to him with coloring books and crayons, but we're not going to do that here. We've already explained it. Now we have another clip from Michael Cohen talking about Alvin Bragg. And this one, I think, is the same sort of flavor that we got from Ted Lieu. Obviously, there are many layers that happen here, and you can go through, and we've already talked about the mens rea and the actus reus and who did the thing and who thought of doing the thing and the intentionality behind committing a crime and the action that accompanies the mental state when committing a crime, and dissected all of that. But really what I think a big part of this is just pure animus, right? It's political prosecution. It's people who just want Trump any way they can get him. You heard Ted Lieu say, hey, if we prosecuted Michael Cohen, then he should be in jail. He went to jail. Why shouldn't Trump be in jail? What's good for Michael Cohen is good enough for Trump, right? You're going to hear that same argument from Michael Cohen here. And I want to sort of break this clip down because it's a wild scene. This is Michael Cohen, a man filled with animus and rage, wants Donald Trump removed, eliminated in any way he can get that done. And it's teeming out of his pores in this clip. And he's bitter because he knows he lied and he had to go into custody and serve his time there. And he wants Donald Trump to suffer the same fate. But that's not how the justice system works. Just because you're angry about your criminality doesn't mean you get to impose your criminality onto other people and transfer the criminality to them. That's crazy. But that's essentially what Michael Cohen wants to do. And in this clip, you can see it bubbling out of him, out of every orifice.
There is only one set of laws in this country. What affects Rev you and I needs to affect somebody like Donald as well. No one is above the law. So if it was good enough for me to go, it should be good enough for him. And
that's not how this works. You committed the crime. You were the lawyer who was making all the moves, conducting the payments, transferring the funds, negotiating the deal. And we've got a statement from Robert Costello that says that you told Robert Costello that Trump knew nothing about any of that, right? This was a transaction between a billionaire and the people who work for him to deal with the other people he's got to deal with. That's it. But now, because he was prosecuted for violating his ethical rules, for violating the law, for doing a disservice to his client, Trump should automatically be implicated. That's not justice. That's not prosecutorial discretion. That's bitterness. That's revenge. That's retribution. That's not how the system works.
A lot of people, today I was with a friend of mine for lunch. Super bright guy, well-educated.
Yeah, very smart.
And his comment to me was very similar to what the question that you're asking. How is it that this ticky-tock type of a case is going to be the first impression that we have as Americans for a president to be indicted? First time in U.S. history.
Yeah, so his friend, much smarter than him, was sitting there at lunch. He's saying, are you serious, you idiots? This is what you're going to do? This is going to be the first case of first impression, an old case from 2016 that involves a payoff to a porn star. You're serious right now? You're going to shatter hundreds of years of precedent and the avoidance of political prosecutions in America for this from Alvin Bragg, a district attorney's office in New York, for somebody whose accomplishments are very, very minor relative to criminal justice in New York. Just ask the citizenry there. Many people, Elise Stefanik and others, have said that it's a disaster zone. So if Alvin Bragg is going to focus all of his energy, if you divided it up into a pie and focused it all on Donald Trump, that's a pretty big failure. And Cohen is saying, his other friend is saying, this is it. This is the big thing. And Cohen's going to explain why his friend is wrong, I guess.
Again, the answer is the law is the law. The same way under the Al Capone theory. They couldn't get him for murder, racketeering, extortion. They couldn't get him for bootlegging or any of the other crimes. They got him for this because, rest assured, Alvin Bragg is not making a mistake. And the team that is behind him, the team that is putting this case together, they're very competent. They know all the facts. Now, they could attack me and talk about credibility, which is something that you're seeing on a lot of the other stations.
Let's back that up. He says they are smart, they are competent, and they are going to be attacking his credibility because, as we said, he is a convicted perjurer, and he's somebody that his own legal advisor, Robert Costello, said he's a liar, called him directly, basically a liar, said he's being dishonest and they're not telling the truth. But if you back that up, did you hear what he said about this Al Capone thing? They couldn't get Al Capone on any of the other crimes, right? They couldn't get him. So they got him on the tax evasion charges. You see this? That's what they want. They know that they don't have him on anything. Setting aside the Al Capone example, going into the history of all of that, right? In this situation, they're saying we can't get him on the Trump-Russia collusion. We can't get him on the confidential documents. We can't get him on J6. We can't get him on, insurrecting the transfer of power. We can't get him on anything. So they're going to get him on a porn star thing. And he's saying, I guess that's what we have to do. It's worth it. We had to do it with Al Capone too. And Trump is like a mob boss. And so if we have to take that action here, we'll just do it, damn it.
For a president to be indicted, first time in U.S. history. Again, the answer is the law is the law. The same way under the Al Capone theory. They couldn't get him for murder, racketeering, extortion. They couldn't get him for bootlegging or any of the other crimes. They got him for this because, rest assured, Alvin Bragg is not making a mistake. And the team that...
They know their case is so garbage. He knows it's so garbage. He's like, this is all we've got. It's the only thing we can do.
That is behind him. The team that is putting this case together, they're very competent. They know all the facts. Now, they could attack me and talk about credibility, which is something that you're seeing on a lot of the other stations. That's okay. Very much like when I went and I testified before the House Oversight Committee, I come with the facts. I come with the documentary evidence. It's irrefutable.
Is it? That's funny because we have some interesting documents that we are going to get to right now. In fact, this one, which is Cohen's waiver of his attorney-client privilege that came right around the same time he executed his plea deal where he pled guilty to perjury. So let's go through this in strong detail because there's a lot to unpack or string together here. But you remember Robert Costello. This was a legal advisor who was doing work in contemplation of full legal representation with Michael Cohen. So Trump has lawyers. Cohen was working for Trump. Cohen also had another lawyer, because lawyers sometimes need lawyers, to say, can I do this thing for this person? And so Cohen hired Costello or was working with Costello in some way, shape, or form. Now, I want to just play a short portion of this because this was what Robert Costello, somebody who is in the know, somebody who has a close relationship with Cohen, or at least was exchanging emails back and forth and talking about Trump. When he was coming out of the grand jury proceeding, he got asked a question that sounded like this.
By anybody's standard. That's pretty. I have a statement here. I'll give it to you people. Yeah.
Cohen paid Stormy Daniels with his own money, not at the behest of Mr. Trump.
That question was, Cohen paid Stormy Daniels with his own money, not at the behest of Trump. Is that right?
That's what he told us.
That's what he told us.
Not his own money, money that he borrowed pursuant to a HELOC loan.
The loan.
Yeah. And why did you take the loan, Michael? I wanted this secret. I didn't even want my own wife to know, much less Melania Trump. You know?
So that's what Cohen told Costello. And we're sitting here wondering, wait a minute, if they're lawyers, how is Costello talking about all that stuff? That doesn't make any sense. So if Cohen is telling the grand jury that he was directly instructed by Trump, and Cohen is also telling his lawyer that Trump has nothing to do about this and knew nothing about it. In fact, my wife doesn't even know about it. I got a HELOC. I wasn't instructed. I was never communicated to by Trump to do any of this. Then one of those has to be a lie, right? Both of those can't be true. So that was the clip from Costello after the grand jury proceeding. And we're thinking that this maybe was the bit of evidence that shattered this whole proceeding. We were expecting an indictment today. We were going to be streaming all day to cover it, but they didn't do it today. Why? Well, the last person we know that testified that we can identify is Robert Costello. And after he testified, we already heard from Cohen. He's making the waves, hitting the rounds on all the cable shows. And he was explaining that I didn't waive my privilege. And here's what he said.
If in fact that I waived attorney-client privilege, I'd like to know when, how, where. I don't recall waiving anything, but again, this is...
We can show him the date exactly because it's right here in the documents. It's actually something that he had his hands on. We're going to go through this in a bit more detail, but the when, the where, the how, February 7th, 2019, New York, Southern District of New York, signed by Michael Cohen. Michael Monaco was his lawyer, attorney for Michael Cohen. So he does this thing, the where, the what, the when, the how. We'll go through this in one quick second, but I wanted to show you that's what he said.
If in fact that I waived attorney-client privilege, I'd like to know when, how, where. I don't recall waiving anything, but
you signed it.
Again, this is I don't know what he's talking about.
And tonight,
now this is Costello. He was on with Tucker and he holds up the document that I just showed you.
he was on another station denying that he waived the attorney-client privilege. Here it is, in writing, and that's his signature on the second page. So
that's unbelievable.
I guess he didn't know that. And
no, he had no idea that he signed it, forgot all about it, or the truth is he's just a liar. Holy moly. Look at this thing. Entered in, titled a waiver 18 CR 602 United States of America versus Michael Cohen. I, Michael D. Cohen, hereby declare I am the defendant in the case. I was previously represented by a lawyer called McDermott, Will, and Emery. They were investigating me in the case that preceded this case, as well as in other investigations about Russian influence in 2016. During the period when I had that law firm, I was approached by Robert Costello, the guy we just heard from. He's over from another law firm. Costello sought to represent me in connection with the SDNY investigation. And this is Cohen speaking. He says, and he presented me with a retainer agreement. He gave me, hey, do you want to enter into an ongoing legal relationship? Cohen says, I declined to sign the retainer agreement and informed him that I was already represented. No, I've already got a lawyer. Although I subsequently had several other conversations and communications with Costello, at no time did I sign a retainer or otherwise agree to retain Costello, nor did I ever consider Costello or any lawyer at the DHC to be my lawyer. Although, he says, I do not believe, this is Cohen, although I do not believe that any of my communications with Costello or any other lawyers at the firm are subject even to attorney-client privilege, I hereby waive whatever attorney-client privilege and other privilege that might be argued to have been attached to such communications. And this was a knowing waiver. I have discussed the foregoing with my current counsel, and I make this waiver knowingly and voluntarily. Dated, hey, somebody write this on a sticky note for Michael Cohen and slap it on his forehead. February 7, 2019, New York, Southern District of New York. You signed it along with your lawyer, Michael Monaco. If you have questions about why you signed it, contact your lawyer. But don't change your story in front of the grand jury. And that is Robert Costello delivering all of the good, juicy bits to us. And Cohen took a plea deal as well, if you missed it. Plea deal information. We've talked about this previously. I'm not going to re-up it here, but it's all part of the public record. You can find it on the DOJ's website. And so Cohen running his mouth out there, talking about what a monster Trump is and what a criminal he is and how much he deserves to be prosecuted and locked in prison for all eternity, has been finally told to shut up. Stop speaking, Michael Cohen. You're wrecking the government's case. We're trying to prosecute Trump here.
While he usually says he cannot talk about what happens in the grand jury room, he has been advised to stop talking about the case on TV after drawing the ire of prosecutors for appearing on TV Monday night to rebut Costello's testimony.
If in fact that I waived attorney-client privilege, I'd like to know when, how, where.
February,
I don't recall
New York.
waiving anything, but again, this is I don't know what he's talking about.
They told him, shut up, stop speaking, please, you're killing us. And so that's Michael Cohen. Now we have some other clips and reactions from other individuals. This was a short comment from one of Trump's other lawyers. This was from yesterday as well.
We're respectful of his views on the trial, and we look forward to an opportunity to develop the record. We're also happy that we got extra discovery. As I said, transparency. The key here is transparency. As each day goes by, we learn more and more facts about why this isn't an issue, why this case shouldn't have been brought, and why President Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong. I think that's the case universally. I'm not going to speak to other lawsuits or litigations or investigations, but I think universally that's what we're seeing, is once all the facts come out, once there's transparency, once everybody knows exactly what happened, then they're going to see that President Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong, and these transactions were just a day-to-day business between a billionaire and his bankers and insurers.
Love it. A ordinary day in the life of a billionaire and his bankers and his insurance providers. That's it. Not complicated at all. But they're turning this into a very grotesque political prosecution that perverts all of the standard norms of justice. And so we're asking ourselves, are the Republicans going to do anything about this? We've already seen the House of Representatives. They sent a letter from Jim Jordan and others. How about in the Senate? The Lindsey Graham senator, he was on with Fox and Friends, and here's what he said. Hey, Lindsey, do you have anything to say about Alvin Bragg and the Trump indictment that might wreck justice in America?
So are you concerned about the District Attorney Bragg, Alvin Bragg, indicting President Trump next week in an unprecedented way, and the circus that would be around that?
Yeah, it's going to blow up our country, and this is a bunch of BS. You've had the prosecutor before Bragg, Mr. Vance, look at the case and pass on it. You had the U.S. Attorney in New York say, I'm not going to do it federally. Right. There was an intervening cause other than Trump running. One of the guys in the DA's office wrote a book very critical of Vance. You should have prosecuted Trump. You let him off, and Bragg feels that pressure. He's a George Soros-backed prosecutor. He can't take the heat. So the guy is yielding to the political pressure generated by the former prosecutor, and this is a case without merit, in my view. Donald Trump will be the only person in the history of New York prosecuted under this theory.
Yeah. What is...
Yeah, because it's just made up specifically for him. Now, Graham, he's a sharp guy. He knows what he's doing when he says certain things. He knows that he wrecked a lot of good Republican candidates' chances when he came out screaming about abortion back during the midterms. And you'll notice he opened that phrase up with, this is going to blow up the country. Isn't that a weird thing to say?
Way, and the circus that would be around that.
Yeah, it's going to blow up our country, and this is a bunch of BS.
Blow up our country.
Yeah,
all right. So, it's very curious language coming from him. Got to keep an eye on him. Now, he's not alone. Ted Cruz is also out, and he says this is a disgusting, egregious overstepping of power.
Yeah, listen, the long and short of it is this indictment, if it comes this week, is absolutely outrageous. It is frivolous. It is baseless. It is a political persecution. It is not a prosecution. It is targeting Donald Trump because Alvin Bragg is a left-wing Democrat who hates Donald Trump. And legally, this case is absurd on its face. Now, it's all based on two New York statutes that concern business records, the kind of records you keep in your business. One makes it a misdemeanor to create a false or fraudulent business record. In this instance, what Bragg is trying to argue is that when Trump gave $130,000 to Michael Cohen, who allegedly paid it to Stormy Daniels as hush money, and he characterized that as legal fees, that business record was false and bogus. Now, he's got a problem with that theory. which is under New York state law, that's only a misdemeanor. That has a 2-year statute of limitations, so you can't even bring this claim now.
Yeah, it's already gone.
So Bragg has a second thing he has to do, which he has to bootstrap that into a different New York statute, which makes it a felony if you create a false business record in the aid of commission of another crime. And presumably that other crime is some sort of Federal Elections Commission violations. Now, the FEC refused to bring that case. The Department of Justice refused to bring that case. The Southern District of New York Department of Justice refused to bring that case. Bob Mueller and the Mueller investigation refused to bring that case. But Alvin Bragg is going to try to bring a case on a theory. You know, they tried it with John Edwards. Remember John Edwards, the Democrat senator who ran for president, had an affair and then gave hush money to his mistress? They tried to prosecute him on this theory. The case got thrown out of court. This is ridiculous. It is bogus, and it is pure partisan attack from a partisan DA.
I remember that with John Edwards. Yeah, didn't he have an affair? I think he had a child with her. What was her name? Anyways, the point is, Ted Cruz is a sharp dude. He's been somebody who has argued in front of the United States Supreme Court. He understands this stuff quite well. And I think his analysis is, right on. They're looking for some aggravating factor that will allow them to carry this on past the ordinary statute of limitations. And when we were reading through the statute, some of this is still speculation, obviously, because the indictment has not been presented. But what we were reading through was talking about intent to even cover up the crime. And so we were looking, as we're listening to all of this evidence and all of these facts and all the new stories come out time and day after day, we're asking ourselves whether there's going to be a bit of evidence that shows that Trump wanted to cover this up somehow, right? Concealment of another crime was one of those aggravating factors. So is Trump trying to conceal it? Did Cohen say he sent an email to Cohen saying, do this and then cover it up? Where's that evidence? Because that part feels also, in addition to everything else, it feels lacking or also missing that aggravating factor. I don't know where that might come from yet, but only time will tell. Now, the Biden administration, a lot of the blue team lefties, they're very excited about people around the world cherishing the United States again because they're guys in charge. They think he's this adult in the room, even though we think he's in diapers most of the time. He is still evidently a lot more acceptable to the rest of the world. So they say. Now, I've never bought that for a minute, but this, I think, confirms that doubt. This is the president of Mexico. He was giving a speech, and we'll translate this for us here. And he was castigating the United States for all sorts of anti-democratic things that are happening here. And I found myself listening to this thinking, yeah, I've got a lot of issues with a lot of these things too. This is Andrés Manuel López Obrador, president of Mexico. He says, but this is if we're evaluating them here. He says the following, to see human rights. Hey, listen, why don't you release Julian Assange? That's what he says. If you are talking about journalism and about freedom, because you have Julian Assange imprisoned. If there is talk of acts of violence, how is that an award-winning journalist in the United States assures that the United States government sabotaged the gas pipeline, Nord Stream, from Russia to Europe, blew it up? And thus, why is it, arms crossed, why? Why is it allowed in the United States to operate a cartel or several cartels that distribute in that country with freedom fentanyl that does so much harm to the young people. Well, a lot of that's coming through that southern border there, my friend. Don't blame us for all of that. Why don't you help us out on that one? Or tell them to see, what are you doing for young people so that they do not consume another fentanyl? We're asking for some help from you, although our administration is terrible on that. That's true. Or China, we're not doing anything. He says, or with all due respect, which he is going to not mean at all, as you'll see here. The former President Trump is declaring, he says, President Trump, that they're going to arrest him. You think that today, for a matter, supposedly, as the lawyers say, he's laughing, allegedly, lawyers say this is about a loving an affair? They're going to arrest him? If that were the case, well, everyone would know why we are not sucking our thumbs. That it is so that it does not appear on the electoral ballot. And if I say this, it is because I suffered from the fabrication of a crime because they did not want me to be a candidate. And that is completely undemocratic because the people are not allowed to be the ones who ever decides. The president of Mexico blasting the United States is contemplating doing some of the most undemocratic things ever. Taking a candidate and charging him with crimes for a love affair is what he says, so that they can take him off the ballot and remove him in a democracy? What a joke. And then they're going to lecture us, is what he says. So some good points there to be made, minus the fentanyl point. Okay, that's part of your problem there too, buddy. So that is the latest on Donald Trump. The indictment coming soon. We don't know. We'll, of course, continue to follow. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for sharing this show with your friends, your family, inviting them to come and join us, because the saga will continue and we'll be here to cover it. Thank you for joining us as we do.